Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek. How are you going?
Yeah, I'm doing really, really well. Quite well. Of course, Ryan, you'd call it 82% well.
He's only at 82%.
Yeah, how are you, Ryan?
Well, I'm good. I had a week off because we had to mourn the loss of a certain important person in our lives, in everybody's lives.
We found out 5 days in advance, so we took the week off.
Where were we when she went? We won't say. We can't say.
I was putting on pants when I found out.
Were you? I was in bed and I found out when I turned my phone on, and my phone had like a little notification saying the news. When, of course, we're talking about the tragic loss of Queen Elizabeth II. R.I.P. the Queen, a person who did help Australian political coup in the 1970s achieve its goals. So thank you to Her Highness for being a piece of shit.
Good job on Dumb 2.
Good job on Doom 2, and your son did a great job on the film we're going to be talking about today in our show, Pictures Powwow.
I give it a lot of points, but Ryan would give it 82, of course.
82 points, 82, flip those numbers around. 28 is no longer the age I am, because I've also had a birthday since we've discussed a movie. That was a whole thing, so I'm now a year older and a year wiser, and I'm now a year further into the podcasting experience, and we're here to talk about a movie that I recommended. Ooh, so exciting. I recommended a film that was recommended to me many years ago by my good friend Zaki. He said he watched this Turkish sci-fi movie on SBS, and I was intrigued, and he said to me, Ryan, it's on Australian Netflix. That's how he even said it. He looked me in the eyes and said, it's on Australian Netflix, which I thought was weird because he's a fellow Australian. I didn't know why he had to specify it was on that Netflix. But hey, listening people, in case you need to find this film, there it is. It's right there for you to watch. Did you remember it was on there, Bartek?
Yes, you told me about it, and I remembered.
He remembered.
Yeah.
Bartek often doesn't remember things I say to specifically remember, so there is that.
Well, don't forget, I also had to put it in the title of the social media post, so I had to look it up.
So we are talking about the 2004 film.
Yep.
What was it called? Do we know? How was it pronounced in the film? G.O.R.A? G.O.R.A? I have a trivia fact about how it's supposed to stand for something, but it actually doesn't. But I can't remember how they said it in the movie.
I'm going to guess G.O.R.A.
G.O.R.A.
Give it like a European sound, not G.O.R.A or something. Yeah.
Let's go G.O.R.A, G.O.R.A. Now, G.O.R.A. And this is a Turkish science fiction comedy film, so we recommend that you give this a watch because it is definitely unique, something you may not have seen before, but there are certain elements. This does parody a lot of things, but they're even outside of the parody stuff. There are certain little elements that you may have seen in other comedies, but the way that these guys go about it is very unique and specific. So give it a watch, come back, because we're going to talk spoilers on this. Now, Bartek, you and I think we can agree, don't have any experience with this movie. We don't have a history with it outside of it is a thing that we now had to watch.
And it's how you spell the Polish word for mountain.
Yeah. Which did that play in?
Play into
the film.
The film? Not really. There was a forest.
There you go. There was a forest. We didn't have much of an experience walking in. You knew it was a Turkish film and it was a sci-fi film.
Yeah,
I didn't even say comedy last week. I just said it's Turkish sci-fi.
No, I remember I made the joke like, oh, Turkish Star Wars. And you're like, oh, maybe kind of. And this was a sci-fi parody film that parodied some very specific things very obviously. So Turkish Star Wars honestly wasn't the most inaccurate thing I said.
No.
I think I could speak for you when I say that it was probably 82% accurate.
It was 82% accurate. You know what this made me think of? Because again, I didn't know what I was getting into. I knew it was probably going to be wacky. Just because of the pictures I had seen. And for some reason I assumed a Turkish science fiction film would be silly in nature. I didn't expect it to be that serious, but what I did get away from this initial watch was this really reminded me of Fat Pizza.
You said it before I did. It wasn't me this time, it was Ryan.
Did you think the same?
Dude, the entire time. The entire film. I was practicing to myself how...
Can we explain what Fat Pizza is for those non-Australians? Because I think we just always not mention what it is.
I'll just say this though. I was practicing in my head how I was going to start talking about Fat Pizza this episode because I feel like this year I keep bringing it up.
You love it.
Okay, so you mentioned SBS before. That's a good segue. SBS is our special broadcasting service channel, which typically has a lot of foreign stuff on it, but it also had some Australian produced things on it, and one of them was a show called Pizza. Eventually got a movie called Fat Pizza, but it's actually just called Pizza.
I always call it Fat Pizza because that's the name of the
pizza. Everyone does. It's more distinct.
It's more distinct. I don't know why they never just called it Fat Pizza. Did they never change it over outside of the film?
No, it was just the film was Fat Pizza, but the rest of the show was just Pizza. I think the sequel shows in recent years, like Fat Pizza Reloaded or whatever it was called, was Fat Pizza.
There you go.
It was an Australian satirical comedy show by a man named Paul Fennick. He's a Maltese background person. It has a lot of, very Australian ethnic kind of humor.
Yeah.
Which a lot of the events follow essentially an everyman character who's also just still a little bit weird. Very hyperactive in terms of how he responds to things.
Very aggressive, you mean?
But always, I don't know how to describe it, but he always seems to be the moral center of the story.
He's the anchor of the show. So Fat Pizza is about the misadventures of a pizza shop and the pizza boys that deliver those pizzas.
The main character is Paulie Falzoni.
Yes, and initially you get the point of view character of Sleek the Elite, who is the wannabe rap star, and he doesn't believe that being a pizza delivery guy is hard, but that show operates on a very specific cartoonish logic where it can take things that you understand in, say, Australian culture and ramps it up with some really incredibly over-the-top visuals and characters as well as language. And a part of the humor is that ethnic diversity of voices because, as you said, Paul Fennick he has a Maltese background, but then they get into Leb culture a lot as certain characters come in. They get into Islander and Maori culture as well, and it goes on and on like that. These different cultures that make up Sydney. It's probably takes place in Sydney. That make up that city, especially when this was made, start being a thing that's in the show and the type of humor that comes from their cultures. So when watching G.O.R.A, you had a lot of that where the pitch of this is, what if a Turkish sci-fi film existed? What I read on the IMDb, I don't know if you read too much,
I did,
is the guy who made this is a stand-up comedian. He was joking around about a Turkish sci-fi film and all the things that you see as a Turkish person. What would that be like in Star Wars or in The Matrix? And you see that.
Or how would a typical Turkish caricature character respond to these kind of things?
And that is very much how Fat Pizza works, where it's like, what if we had all of these people and they responded to A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You have a mega empire comedy series out of it. This is a mega empire comedy trilogy of films for G.O.R.A, where you can definitely see the germ of what this is blossom as you enter into the film. Because initially you go, okay, I'm getting the vibe, as you do when you enter a film that you don't know anything about. You sit down and you go, okay, let me just ingratiate myself to the film as it does it to me as well. And I liked this, if I have to tell you what I think of it overall. I liked it. I got bored of it at many points. I laughed at it only a few times. There were certain moments of laughter where I said to myself, if there was more of this would be more my jam. There was lots of jokes that didn't work for me, not even from a cultural disconnect because of language or whatever, but just some stuff I'm just like, okay, here we go. And it's too long. This is a movie that needs to be 85 minutes long, not just over 2 hours long. And that is where I land with it. I admire it more than I like it. How did you fare with this?
Kind of similar. I didn't get bored with it, but I definitely kind of got into an autopilot mode at some point. It didn't feel. I walked into it saying, "Oh, it's just a bit over 2 hours, so this is going to be a bit of a long one." It kind of breezed by for me. When we were, I think at one point I paused and I was at like the 53-minute mark. I'm like, "Oh, really? Geez, it feels like not much has happened." Like they were still in prison at that point. It obviously the comparison in my head to Fat Pizza was something that I was really amused by, and then when I was reading the trivia afterwards about how this is based on like a stand-up routine that this guy did, but expanded into a film, made it a lot more interesting to me. I think, and also similar to what you were saying, like it's something that I very much admire, the fact that it exists, and I did have a good time with it, but also, it did feel like there were some things that it could have done a bit more of to, make it really into that, like, oh, this was really my jam. This is something that I want to show to people.
What was something that made you laugh? What was something that amused you in this?
You mentioned before the thing about being baffled by, or like certain cultural things that like just didn't read. It didn't so much make me laugh as just make me, kind of be amused at myself of like, oh, I have no idea what this is about. Like there were 3 moments in the film where characters would say something and then stare at the camera and like wink or something. And it was like, oh, I wonder if something was lost in translation here.
I remember those moments.
I do too, yeah.
I'm trying to remember the context. I understood one of them.
I remember them all. Well,
okay,
the third one I'm a bit confused by. The first one was the right-hand man of the villain asking him, so, why is it that you hate humans so much? He looks at the camera and just like, there's a quick wink.
Okay, that one I understood. It was basically, to me, now this could be wrong, it was almost him looking at the camera because it's very meta and fourth wall breaking, and they talk about the script even at points and the movie making. This is what comes across to me as the right-hand man winking at the audience, being like, we're going to explain the backstory
I was
now.
Thinking something like that, yeah.
And that's what I got out of it. I can't remember the other two.
The next one that I remember was when the hero, Arif, meets the blue guy, and like they're having the conversation. It's like, oh, here's the card, escape with the princess. And Arif, the main character, invokes one of the running jokes of something being wrong with his face. It's like, what is wrong with my face? Like, nothing, man. That's why I'm asking you. And then he walks away, making his, like, Paulie-esque comment to himself. And then the guy, I think he directed it at a guard somewhere nearby, telling him something along the lines of, like, make sure you don't feed this one. And then he looks at the camera and quickly winks.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, that one happened so quickly that I'm like, did he just wink at me?
Okay, I'll tell you a moment that made me laugh a lot. I lost it. This was my big laugh out loud moment of the film.
I have to remember what mine was, but go on.
Which was, they're at the marketplace or something. There's many scenes at the marketplace. There's actually 2 jokes at the marketplace that get me laughing a lot. This is one of them. This is the bigger one, though, which is they're trying to pay for something, and he gives them, like, whatever the alien money is. See, Bartek's dying. Whatever the alien money is, and they're like, this isn't good enough. Then he gives him Turkish money, and the guy's like, oh yeah, Turkish money works. That works.
He tried giving him American dollars, and it's like, what, am I going to buy candy with this?
And then he gives him Turkish money, and he's like, that's great, that works. That was a real laugh out loud, because the way everybody played it, and the physicality of it, the absurdity of this little Turkish man grabbing out the money from his pocket and his wallet was talking in this alien environment in space, and it's just so ludicrous. And then the other was, again, they're on the run, they're in the marketplace, they're trying to stay low, they're trying to get this, and there's this guy yelling, and he tells them to be quiet, blah, blah, blah. Like the market guy's screaming out his prices he's got, and then they need to buy this thing off of him, but then he gets a phone call. Our main character gets a phone call because he gets good reception pretty much anywhere, because that's set up early, and that was a fun little gag. And just him taking a moment aside to have a business deal about some carpets.
Yes, I remember that. was like right as he got to the marketplace, right?
Yeah. And he's like, oh, hold on for a second. And then he's like arguing on the phone
Are
about
they tourists?
like the
yeah, give them 5,000.
5,000 for that. No, don't scroll down there. And then he goes back to the plot, or like the plot's an inconvenience for him and his business that he's trying to run.
Yeah,
and I love that.
That's something to re-emphasize, especially about the first thing you mentioned, the Turkish lira thing. When we have these sci-fi, Western sci-fi things, it's like, oh, the culture in space feels very, white centric. Like, oh, a lot of the main characters on Babylon 5 are like white people. They speak English,
American English, and they have American values.
So just seeing like very specific, like much smaller country, Turkish centric space. There's a lot of funny jokes going on that. I just remembered one of my big laughs was it was actually a payoff to an earlier joke. So when they finally meet the Obi-Wan guy, I think there's some confusion about whether, like, oh, is he actually the guy or not? And it's like, oh, okay, we have to go and find out for real. And the main character goes up to him and, like, pokes him and goes, fuck!
Yeah.
That really got me.
It's him. Yeah. I really like the throwaway line from Bob Marley character.
Bob Marley Farouk, was it?
Yeah, Farouk. Where he offhandedly says, and I don't even think he's blind. He got really annoyed with that. And I appreciate that, because I also got annoyed with that section of the movie. I found that tiresome. The whole trained by the master, let's install the Matrix fight moves into our main character's brain and go through the different outfits. That was boring to me. I didn't really care for that, but I liked the Bob Marley Farouk character in that sequence, because he was also annoyed that we were doing this plot. Okay, so the film is about a human man, whose job is they sell carpets and rugs, but they also like to forge alien stuff to sell.
Like UFO sightings
to sell. And they always fail because they make obvious, like, oh, this is a plate, you can still see the writing on it. And
specifically photos of
sightings. Of UFOs and tails and stuff. And the wraparound to this is, after all these hectic adventures he's just gone on, he finally got to have a camera that survived to take a photo, and he brings it back, and the guy still doesn't believe him. And then when he starts to tell the compelling story about his adventures, and you can see it starts to sway the guy, he then says the name of the aliens, which is a type of food. Is that correct? I think that's like a type of food or a type of thing that you have on a side, because then the guy hears the story and goes, oh, really? Okay, and then he like orders things, and it's like the name of the aliens is also the name of this thing he's ordering from downstairs, and it just deflates the entire thing for our main character, and he's like, fuck it, I tried. And that's the plot, where in the interim he's abducted by aliens. It's a classic, there's a bad guy, he has to overthrow the bad guy and save the girl, get with the girl, and he meets some wacky characters along the way. Your C-3PO robot guy, kind of. Your kitchen guy, the cook who works in the kitchen, who's content with being a prisoner, but by the end he's gonna rise up against. And you have the Obi-Wan Kenobi master, and the girl, and the right-hand man of the villain, and the old emperor who's good deep down, but he's not being good right now because the bad guy's got some info on him, and that's the gist of it. It doesn't try to deviate or break from the traditional standards of blockbuster science fiction, because that's what it's playing with. What it is doing, though, is adding that Turkish flair to it, and a very unique sense of comedy as well. And so, and your protagonist, the chosen one, is just some greedy, narcissistic rug salesman. That's it. That's who your hero is.
With a bit of a smart mouth.
He's aggressive.
Aggressive.
Aggressive. I like how they're slightly out of sync as well. That was a nice little detail. And there's some fun sci-fi elements. I'll tell you one sci-fi element I really liked. It was so absurd. I wish there was more of this. The bad guys walk past this device where he puts a fruit in it, an orange, and it goes in it, and then it spews out a can of drink, like an orange flavored drink.
Mm-hmm.
indicating like he just put that orange in and then it made this can of drink for him, and I thought that was absurdly brilliant, and I loved it very much.
Maybe that was the equivalent of putting a coin in a vending machine. You pay for it with an orange.
Oh, maybe. Or it's just taking the materials of the orange and making into this canned drink, and I love that. I love that a lot. So tell us about your journey with G.O.R.A overall. So you walked in, you didn't know too much, you got some fat pizza vibes.
Before I started that, I was turning on Netflix. My brother's like, "Oh, what are you watching?" I was like, "Oh, something called like G.O.R.A," because I didn't know. I remember that it was like an abbreviation.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, "Oh, do I say? Is it an initialism? Is it an acronym? Do I say it? Do I spell it?" And then when the film ended, I was like, "Oh, well, there wasn't an acronym. It was just the title."
Yeah.
So I literally walked in not knowing anything. I just knew that it was a Turkish sci-fi film. So when the first lines of dialogue happened and I got no subtitles, I'm like, why aren't I getting subtitles?
And it's in English.
Wait, are they speaking English? Are they swearing?
Fuck. Yeah.
I was so confused by that.
Me too. I was like, oh shit, I didn't think to mention dubs or subs. I just assumed there would be no dubs.
Well, I saw that there was only one language track, and when I didn't get subtitles for that, I was thinking to myself, you know, like already judging the film, like, man, it's so inconsiderate of them. What if there are people watching this who, you know, like have hearing problems and they need the subtitles? Now they're going to watch this whole, you know, multilingual film and not be able to hear anything. But then, oh no, it was just a gag.
It was a
you
gag.
were not the audience that this film was intended for were not meant to understand what was being said.
It made you think about how they, as people who consume media, have to watch films where the characters don't speak in their native tongue for the good first portion of the film. And we've seen that with Bollywood films. There are some Bollywood films we've covered where they are speaking English in parts, especially early on. And you get that comment where you can tell it's a frustration, like, can't we just speak in Turkish from the beginning? Must we
It reminded me of
straight away?
Of To Be or Not to Be.
Oh, really?
Well, because that film had the whole thing of, like, they're speaking in Polish, then it announces, like, for the sake of clarity, the rest of the film will be in English.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I didn't know too much either. I really loved our main guy from The Drop. I loved what he looks like. I love that performance. When he is talking about, when we're unfurling what he is. Because you get it. He's like, oh, he's a UFO scam guy. Okay, but then he's got this other job where he's showing off what looks like these ancient artifacts to the translator and her Japanese translator and her tourists and whatnot, and he's like, no photos, these are freshly painted. So he's got all of these scams on the go, and then this scam is to then take them into his carpet store, his carpet and rug store, so that they could buy the actual goods that he's peddling. And I was like, oh, I love this. And he's the kind of character where he's got like 15 things happening all at once. Like, he just walks down to a place and a guy's like, hey, you. And he's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to deal with this. He's also on the phone and he's yelling at an employee, and he's got a friend here and he's got a friend there and an acquaintance here. And I was like, oh, yeah, I am loving this. Yeah. And then he has a joke where it's like, there's an English person waiting for you. He's like, oh yeah, who is it? Prince Charles? And then he walks in and it's Prince Charles. A guy who I looked up his career.
I did too.
And he plays nothing but Prince Charles.
I think there was one thing that wasn't Prince Charles, and then one thing that was like Prince Charles but in Spanish.
Oh!
Or something. It was like something Carlos something.
Oh, that's awesome. That's amazing. He started with National Lampoon's European Vacation. And I've seen that film, so I can attest that he is in that as Prince Charles.
Yes, so this is a good double feature with Doom 2, which starts with the Queen.
Oh, man, that actor must be getting fucking work now. He gets to play King Charles.
Charles, yes.
King Charles III.
Yeah, Ryan and I were saying before this started, like, man, if I wasn't sick last week, he would still be Prince Charles while we're recording. Now he's King Charles.
You know, one of my favorite jokes doesn't work anymore, which is in the TV show The Critic. Prince Charles is getting kicked out of a nightclub. The guards throw him out, the bouncers throw him out, and he's in his full garb. And he says, like, I will have your heads for this. And the bouncer just says, oh yeah, who died and made you king of England? And then he starts whimpering and a tear rolls down his face. He goes, nobody. That joke doesn't work anymore, but boy did it work for like 30 years when that episode came out onwards. So there you go. But the Prince Charles segment, I loved that. I was like, okay, where are we gonna go with this?
And going back to the main actor, just when I read after the fact that like he was a stand-up comedian, I'm like, oh yeah, I could tell. Like the guy's energy throughout the film, the focus, it was on point.
Oh,
really, really great.
Yeah, he and I didn't realize until way into the movie that he was playing multiple characters in this. He's the villain.
He was the villain?
He's the villain. He's the long-haired bad guy. That's him.
Shit, I did not know that.
I think he plays like 3 or 4 characters.
I knew that he was like the flashback porn producer guy. But
yeah.
I didn't know that he was playing anyone else.
He was the bad guy. Oh. That's why you don't have a lot of scenes of them together, because that would be money.
That's a fair point.
And that's him, but with the long hair and without the mustache. He has a little goatee thing instead. I loved him. I thought our main character was awesome. He always has a quip. Always has snarky line or a piece of attitude or business. You don't want me to go full ninja on you now.
I remember when he shortly before they escaped their prison cell, and like the guard told them to like be quiet, and he like just said something back like, "Oh, you fuck, I'll go away" or something.
There's so much swearing in this. I like that a lot.
That line in particular reminded me of Paulie from Fat Pizza. Though. I was like, that's something Paulie would say.
The Paulie energy from Fat Pizza was in maximum overdrive when the shower scene happened. That's such a Paulie scene. If Paulie was there, no. In fact, he was a little too quiet. Paulie would have had some more things to say about the shower happening there. But
well, one other thing that really, really reminded me of a specific gag from Fat Pizza was going back to, "Oh, sir, why do you hate humans so much?" Wink. The flashback explaining why he hated humans.
That was when I first wrote in my notes, "Oh, this is an episode of Fat Pizza." Yes. Because the flashback is in black and white, old school camera.
Old-timey. Even like his fashion was like kind of old-timey.
The spaceship.
It was 1700s.
The spaceship was old-timey spaceship. It's shit. It's a shitty
basic looking robot buddy.
Oh, yeah, like the old school silent movie robot type of thing. And
the
then
Tin Man.
and then, of course, the human that they meet, what was the reaction that he had to meeting aliens?
He got really mad, threw something at the villain, knocked over the robot, and sodomized him.
He fucked the robot while yelling at the other guy to fuck off, basically. And then the guy had to go back into his spaceship, tearfully looking at his robot being fucked and leave him behind.
And that is what fueled his hatred of humans to the point that he very frequently enslaves them.
The gag visually that I liked a lot that came from that segment was his shocked face at what happened, and then that's his portrait that's in the villain's like lair. There's like a giant painting or like image of his grandfather hanging on the wall, and it's an image of him doing that face from that segment, and I laughed at that a lot. Every time we get going back there, I'm like, hey, there's your grandfather, and he's like, oh.
It reminded me of when Paulie's relative, ancestor met Hitler.
Oh yeah.
Black and white. They had a fight.
Yeah. That's correct. And I enjoyed that a lot. I'm trying to think. Oh, I like that the lightsabers were just torches. That was a good gag there. And even when they were explaining the plot, I was like, oh, it's the Fifth Element, huh? And then they explain that's just the Fifth Element. And then I'm thinking, oh, I'm glad Bartek has seen the Fifth Element before having to watch this movie. Now you understand the plot.
When they were explaining it, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm trying to remember things from it. But then once they got to the scene of like, having to activate the Force stones, I'm like, oh, of course.
Yeah, and the enemy was a big fireball.
Yeah.
like in the Fifth Element. There should have been a Gary Oldman scene though, like where he phones up. I love in the Fifth Element when Gary Oldman, the villain, is on the phone to the big big fireball. How did they phone each other? I think about that a lot. And then after he phones him, like black ooze starts forming from the top of his head, and you go, "Where's that coming from?" We talked about that in the Fifth Element. Like, where did the ooze come from on his head? Because it came from above the plastic visor, not under it. So that was weird. But
sorry, you're reminding me of another character in the film.
Oh, you want to talk about your favorite character in the film? I
I
wrote them
look, the
down.
main character I think is my favorite, but if
You have to have a second favorite.
if we have to have a second, I mean, I like Bob Marley Farouk though.
Did you? You didn't love the little guy that they kept screaming at and asking, "Who are you? Who are you?" They're a child. We find out he has a full facial hair. That's how kids work. It's like,
Yeah, there's a running joke in the film, where the villain and his right hand man get alerted that something is coming for them or something by this very short person wearing red and a visor over their eyes. And every time after he finishes reporting, they just cannot get over the fact that they have no idea who he is. They just keep like asking, like, "Who are you?" and like hitting him and shooing him away.
the right hand man always responds with "Get out of here." He doesn't ask who he is. The villain asks, and
Yeah.
he's like, "Get out of here!" And he starts throwing shit at him. And then there comes a point where they actually like answer that question. They're like, "No, let's grab him and ask him who he is and what's his deal. Now let's have sex."
Yeah, they have a threesome.
Okay.
Some characters in the film were gay, I think. So for everyone listening
Did the
to,
writer of this film walk in? Because you saying it in that manner is the homophobic type of humor that they have in this, where a lot of it is like, "Oh, that's pretty gay." Yeah, I think that's pretty gay. The look, here's, and even on the IMDb where this has a high rating, a lot of the ratings even mention like this is a great sci-fi comedy, but one of the things that really brings it down is just like the really flame gay jokes and homophobic jokes. And I was like thinking about that when I finished it, because I was just like, if I had to tell anyone what's the main type of humor of this film, it is, hey, have you ever noticed things in sci-fi are pretty gay? That's what I would describe as the main humor of the film. And I think that's disappointing because it's also the lamest type of humor that the film has going for it. They're not even the greatest gay jokes. Like I wish they went more with it, if anything. Like make better gay jokes. I think they could have done so much better with it, but they're very observational, like, "Oh, that's kind of gay. Look, they're watching a male guy dance. Pretty gay, right?
someone walked in, change it to a woman.
Change it to a woman, then change it back to men, and oh, look, they're implied to have had gay sex. That's pretty gay." And like it just, that was kind of where the gay jokes were. I would have loved, I know this is regressive, but I would have loved to have like a screaming, flagrant gay guy character, because the closest we get is the right-hand man guy, and the most we get out of him is just like, he's kind of gay.
But we also have like the C-3PO guy.
Yeah, but he's not much, because he's just like a robot. He's just C-3PO. Like, what I'm wanting is, in the old school British films called the Carry On series, they had I'm forgetting his name, Kenneth Williams, and he was gay, and he always played these extravagantly over the top, "Oh, hello there," and he's such a fun he's like such a fun actor and fun presence to watch, and a lot of his jokes are like he's gay, and I'm just like, look, I just need more of that. If we're going to do the whole it's gay sci-fi affair, the gay robot, or like the flamboyant robot, he wasn't enough for me. Also, I think he's supposed to be the mascot of this series, because every time I look at posters or images, it is always of that robot character. And yet, I would describe him as one of the lesser elements of the film. Like, I kind of keep forgetting that he's in it. He didn't really do much for my taste of jokes or even character. He was just there.
I know. Well, before he went to prison, he was kind of like the gay friend of the female lead. That's the kind of character he was doing. It's like, they're crying at the Turkish films together. He's doing her fortune, like the way he's like sitting and holding himself is, very effeminate. And then that's the kind of like gay vibe he's giving off. Like throughout when I was watching the film, because there were, this recurring, to sound really brain dead here, recurring gayness in the film. I was trying to understand, like, is this like just a sort of thing that this alien race gravitates towards, or is this really just specific characters? Because I'm looking at the king, I'm like, oh, he looks kind of, well dressed. Is that like, like, oh, gay people dress well, but he's not really a gay character because he's got a wife.
But then they threaten him. with gayness.
Then they threaten him with gayness, and it's like, oh, okay.
What a statement that is, by the way.
So is everyone gay? Do they like only get with women for recreational purposes?
Procreation,
that's what I'm... Recreational. They get with men for recreational purposes.
Well, yeah, they play tennis with them.
They play tennis with them.
In the bomb. And
also you have a lot of the like really tall women characters who like tend to be like these kind of strong guard characters, like especially next to the main character, like they're leading him back to his cell kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's a place in sci-fi where you have very fluid sexuality or gender type of societies or aliens, and that's fine. And if they leaned into that being a thing more, I know it sounds strange of me, and this has a wealth of problems to it itself, but I needed them to be more overt with it, more blatant, more strong with it, because as it is, it's just very boring when every time it's just like, here's a scene where the film is saying the joke is they're gay in a very like, they're gay. To bring it back to something like Pizza. Pizza has so many jokes about gay people and gay characters. Like, one of my favorites. You always forget this. Whenever I bring him up, you always go, which one was that? Chef Bernard. I love Chef Bernard in that series. He's like in one episode, then he plays another character who's like the evil food critic who judges them and like is laughing hysterically. But when he's Chef Bernard and he's like an asshole chef and he's like this gay, flagrant, over the top, sexually deviant chef that they have to murder. I love that. And because he's so over the top that it goes beyond the point of like whatever, at least for my sensibilities. This brings a wealth of problems too. It goes beyond bigotry to just coming around to cartoonishness.
Yeah, that's kind of what we want.
And that's what G.O.R.A and Pizza have in common, which is they're taking these trappings of societal norms or societal issues and caricatures and ideas of culture and ideas of people and values and turning them up to 11 to heighten how silly it is. It's silly when our main chosen one character is this Turkish stereotype of a carpet salesman who can't be bothered but to do the heroic, storyline because he's annoyed at the fact that he was promised that his phone would get reception anywhere and then it's kind of getting shit reception here. That is funny because it's so over the top.
Yeah, his values are in the wrong place.
The most over the top stuff we get with the gay stuff is just like the guards wear pink and we see their butts like in the pink pants. I need more. Like, if you're going to go there, fucking give them a rainbow army where they're marching with flags of the rainbow colors. And I'm trying to come up with better gay joke materials for them that are also absurdly problematic, but I need them to do that because, again, if I had to tell you what G.O.R.A's humor is, I would have to sigh and go, it is, sci-fi's kind of gay. And that's it. Like, there's much gayer sci-fi you can go with. The fact that Flash Gordon is a movie that already existed in pop culture at this time and they don't draw anything upon that as an example is ludicrous. The villain himself, I found to be the weakest aspect of the movie. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. What did you think of a bad guy?
I thought he was all right, but again, going back to the whole gay stuff, trying to grasp what his situation was with regards to that was something that I kept thinking in my head because he wanted to marry the girl so that he could become king. And obviously it wasn't a thing of true love, but then I would look at all the gay stuff and it's like, oh, okay, so this is like, he's still gonna, he is gay, but he doesn't feel like he is. It's just like the things that he is surrounded by kind of allude that he is gay.
Yeah.
He's doing this just for the power, but I feel like that could have been an aspect that, would have been a bit more, better served acknowledged when it comes to his interactions with the love interest, because if just taking those scenes on their own, it just feels like I'm marrying you, but it doesn't have this absurd dissonance going on. But yeah, he's got some over the top things outside of that, like when he goes down to the or goes up to rather the marketplace and he just shoots people while he's walking by. Obviously, I find out now he's being played by the main guy, so there's that energy there. I wouldn't say that I found him necessarily to be like the weakest part of the film, but yeah, there is more that could have been done with him.
Yeah, he just didn't gel with me. And then I found out he was the same actor, and then that really made it hurt more because his performance is okay as this, but I don't think he knew how to play this character. He knew the main guy. Because you read the stories, he's basing it on so many people in his life, and there's characters named after family members or his own name, and there are some characters in this where the creative voice behind this project really knows these people, but he doesn't know the sci-fi villain. He doesn't know what that is. He just goes, they're a bad guy who's kind of gay, and they want power. And yet, again, going back to... Again, we're not arbiters of this. And again, the thing that I'm wanting is also things that have been heavily ridiculed. But a part of it is like, well, I'm conditioned to these things because they have been there for so long they kind of work, which is the queer-coded villain character. You need to have that offset there when our main guy is so hetero. And he's a Turkish guy. And I was always waiting for moments where our main character guy would have some quote-unquote funny thing to say about all the gay sci-fi stuff around him as a normal Turkish man who's selling rugs. And I honestly didn't feel like we got that.
Now that you mention it, yeah, that feels...
a part of it is...
Maybe we're looking down on Turkish culture by saying that, but it feels like that's
but
been a thing...
even outside of Turkish culture, that character, I was waiting for him to have some remark about being in this very flagrant, over-the-top sci-fi society while all he needs is his grimy streets that he lives on. And he doesn't really comment upon that as much as you would like. He has mentions of it when he's with the Obi-Wan Kenobi character, but when he's facing off against a villain, there's just something about in these things, especially sci-fi with characters like Ming the Merciless, say, those queer-coded over-the-top sci-fi villains where they're somewhat turned on by the hero. They're problematic, but they're fun. And you can tell that that's what they want to do, but they don't want to commit to it. I would have liked it, again, problems. I would have liked it if the villain was attracted to the hero and played around with that.
Yeah.
That would have been fun. Funny. It could have been funny. But as they go along, it's just to me, the villain guy, he was just a guy that kept taking up scenes and his motivations never really escalated. They never really amplified. There was the moment where he blackmailed the existing king with those photos, and that was kind of it. And then they also have my least favorite type of ending to, a downfall for that kind of character, which is, earlier we recorded him doing a thing where he conveniently said all the things that we need to unveil him as the villain. And now we can play it on the TV screen for you. And there's him in bed with the two guys, and he's saying, everyone's stupid, and I'm the best. Ha ha ha, I'm evil, man. And I hate that. I think it's lazy. I think it's very bad.
Because this is that character is an exaggerated caricature kind of character. In all this discussion about him, there is one movie villain that I keep coming back to that it would have been so great if this character could have been a bit more like that. Again, from another silly European film, Hogo Fogo.
If this was Lemonade Joe and he was Hogo Fogo, he could have also been similar to Hogo Fogo, or even his character, the same actor from Dinner for Adele, the mad scientist, where we didn't even see that character that much, but every time you saw him, you knew exactly what he was evoking.
Yeah, when I mentioned before, going through the marketplace, shooting people in a split second kind of thing. This kind of deranged mind, impulsive, snap of the wrist. Hogo Fogo was a character that, even though that film, Lemonade Joe, was paced and things happened a bit slowly with that character, they were so over the top and unexpected because it was such a trickster character that it made it a bit more fun and more bizarre. It's ooh, could we have a bit more bizarreness with this character who already kind of looks like a sort of, deranged kind of character?
Well, I see. You know how you said at the beginning of this you were prepping in your brain how you're going to bring up Fat Pizza?
Yeah.
I was prepping in my brain how I was going to bring up Lemonade Joe.
Well, there you go.
Because Lemonade Joe, for those who don't know, is a Western made by the former Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic, during their occupation from the USSR. And it's a Western that is riffing on the values of both the USSR and the West. And the thing that's really funny about it is it's a really, really, really well-made Western of a previous era, of an old school silent era Western, but it has dialogue, but like the type of filmmaking it's evoking.
Yeah.
And the characters it's riffing on. It has a very adept knowledge of the genre it's playing in. I don't get that from G.O.R.A. I think it is as simple as the comedian, was like, wouldn't it be funny if you had a Turkish guy in these stupid sci-fi stories? But I don't really get from this film, not even from the making of it visually, because this is a very expensive film for the Turks.
Oh, yeah.
But just story-wise, I don't get that feeling of anyone really has that much of a deep connection to science fiction films outside of being able to say, hey, it's a Star Trek thing, or hey, it's a
Star Wars,
Star Wars, or
help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi,
Matrix. It doesn't have that for me. This also evoked Kung Pao in many moments as well for my liking. And again, in Kung Pao, that guy knows a lot about kung fu movies, those old school movies you'd see late at night, and the dubbing's all off, so you just mute it and you dub it yourself. He knows those movies, so he can play around with that. What do you think? Do you think similar to me about this? You're the guy with less of a sci-fi sensibility, so this may be me coming in as this kind of judge of like, ooh, do they know sci-fi well enough? And I don't think they did. How do you feel about it? Am I coming at it too rough?
I mean, in the sense that I've known you for so long that all of the stuff you're saying, makes sense to me, because I've heard you talk about sci-fi many times, and I haven't obviously done as much. Like, I remember one time, I think it was one of the first times we ever brought up Futurama. Like, I'd seen some episodes of the show. I'm like, oh, it's like a comedy show set in the future, and you were talking like very passionately about like, yes, there are some episodes where the comedy is really good, but then there are some episodes with really good sci-fi elements. So over the
which is true.
Yeah, so over the 8 years since we've been friends, I've been trying to think a bit more harder about sci-fi things that I watch. I'm like, oh, what would be something that Ryan would really latch onto here? So in that sense, like, I am hearing some bits of that type of Ryan coming in with what you're saying, but also, being me, this just felt like, oh yeah, there's like a bunch of like spacey, futuristic looking things here. It feels like sci-fi to me.
Yeah, it feels like and that's what it needs to be. It needs to evoke it, feel it, and play with it. Is there any other standout moments or characters that you want to delve into? Because we've touched upon some elements that do work, some that don't, but is there anything else floating around for you?
I mean, there are definitely characters we haven't talked about that much, but really there isn't that much to say. Like, we have like the Obi-Wan character and Bob Marley Farouk, but we've kind of said all that there really is with them. Like, the Obi-Wan character is like just playing that type of character, but with all these like little eccentricities.
He's that weird pervert.
Yeah, and the now I'm just remembering the magazines in the film, like when they open, they're stuck together.
Yeah, they're worse with each person they meet who's been there longer. Yeah, that was good. That was a good gag. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And again, I quite liked the Bob Marley Farouk character, but it was just like what this character is just kind of weird in the film. Like, oh, he's a guy that calls himself Bob Marley because he ran a reggae bar, and he has the Rastafarian hat, but nothing else about him is really reggae, and he's like straight manning the whole film, and that's funny, but like, not much else to say
He
there.
blossoms over it. He's a character I didn't like at first, but by the end I was endeared to him, and I was happy that he had grown. And I think maybe he has the unsung hero, the unsung role of the film where he has to develop, because no other character is. Our main guy doesn't really develop. He finds a girl. He does some heroic acts. He knows how to fight now, and he dresses in a new outfit. But he doesn't really change all that much. He's still like a greedy piece of shit. Who's really looking out for himself and minorly now others. While we need someone like the Bob Marley Farouk character, where he starts out as somebody who's happy with where they are. He's happy being the prisoner. He's happy he's got a content job in the kitchen. By the end, he's now helping overthrow. And that was good. You need that push from somebody because, again, the robot guy, his was very, I don't know, I just didn't think there was a lot there. He was in this position, now he's not.
The robot character, was it 216?
Yeah.
226? I don't know. But he was basically just a tool to exist so that the main character could be, he's inclusive of the robot character kind of thing. That's what he felt like to me.
Yeah, and also, am I crazy? Maybe I missed something here. They threatened throughout the whole run of the movie about these people with the chips in their head. Like, these were people and they've crossed the line. Now they've got these chips in their heads and now they're like vegetables, basically.
Oh, yeah, the guy at the rose.
Yeah, and they had a bunch of them throughout the film and they kept warning it and it made me think of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where that film also did that.
This is an analogy for a lobotomy, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, yes, and in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, they show you, like, this is a person who's been electroshocked, this one's been lobotomized, foreshadowing that this could happen to our main character. And they did that here with the chip. And why? Why was that an element?
Yeah,
they kept building that. And
the
then
main character
never
got the chip in the back of the head.
Yeah. I was waiting for a moment at least where the villain does that. Yeah, and then our hero is in the down moment where they're defeated, but then it's up to our other heroes to finally take action and help him. Or maybe his virtues from the training makes the chip break off of his neck and then he fights harder. But no, it's just an element that I was waiting for.
I have this button here. When I press it, the chip that you've forgotten about will activate.
I would have loved if the villain did what you just said.
Yeah.
That you gave him more personality than he had in the entire run. If he grabbed out a button and said, I'm going to now activate the button that you forgot, and then he looked at the camera and you too. And then he pressed it, boom. That would have been awesome. But I was great. I felt like that was something that they were promising would pay off, and then it didn't. Am I wrong in reading it that way? Did you feel similar?
I didn't think about it until now, but as I was just saying, they're like, oh yeah, they had the scene with the chip in the back of their head. They could have done something with that.
And they showed people who were bad and they got punished, and it was like this cruel thing.
The only thing that you said there that I would criticize is when you said he had no personality. Man, he was really upset when his robot got sodomized.
Well, that was his grandfather.
Oh, was that not him?
No, that was...
Oh.
He's in the flashback?
I thought that was him.
No, he was getting vengeance for what they did to his grandfather.
Oh.
And they're like, you still aren't letting go of that? No! Don't you know what happened to my grandfather? And then it cuts back to his grandfather who looks slightly different and he's in an old-timey spaceship.
I have no issues with what you said now.
Thank you. Take it back. That's
you get my 82% approval.
I was going to make an 82% joke and then you took it from me. There's an 82% chance that you could have done it and you didn't. That is... Okay, final thing, if we have nothing else we want to discuss. Final thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first in a trilogy.
Yeah, that was interesting to learn.
I did mention that last week. Hence, I compared it to... the week before.
2 weeks ago.
Hence, I compared it to Doom. And I was correct, by the way. How I compared it to Doom was you had the first two movies came out relatively close to one another, and then the third movie came out
you did
later.
Say that, yeah.
And Doom 3 did come out, like, 2012, 2013-ish, I want to say.
Yeah, it wasn't just 1 or 2 years.
It was quite a few years
half a
later.
Decade-ish.
And same with these. Now, are you interested to see the next film in this trilogy?
I think I would be.
Okay, that's interesting, because I don't know what they would do. Because I was quite content with where we left him.
Oh, if we were asking if I'm content, yeah, I'm content, but I'm also kind of curious.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. They get lower rated as they go. This is an 8 on IMDb. The next one's like a 7.6 or something, and then the final one I think is like a 6 point something or other. I don't know. I'd have to double check.
7.6 is pretty good.
No. Yeah. And hey, ratings on IMDb don't matter. I mean, Dooms movies aren't the highest rated things, and yet they're very popular films.
Love on a Leash.
Love on a Leash is a great film, and IMDb's correct for rating it that way. Are we doing Love on a Leash next week? Find out in a moment. But would you recommend G.O.R.A?
I would. I know that we had more negative things to say than I was expecting in the episode, but there was... It is a film that I will be thinking about for a while. It had an energy that I wasn't expecting, a sense of humor that really appeals to me, and the lead character, the lead actor of the main character, is really fun to watch. I know it is 2 hours, but if you have an experience like mine, it probably will go by a bit quick.
Yeah, it's. I also tentatively recommend it. I think there are problems with it. It definitely comes across as a good first attempt at something. Like, if the other films were better, then I would be like, oh, this was where they had the launch pad to go off of. Because there is a lot of things where you go, I like this, and you could make this even better. And there's just a unique personality to it that we aren't accustomed to. And I imagine not many people are outside of the country it's made in. And even then, I don't think there's a lot of it that was lost to me from the cultural differences. I read a lot of IMDb reviews that were mentioning that there would be for people, but then there are other people who said, I didn't really feel lost in it culturally difference-wise. So I didn't either, so I think it's fine, but give it a watch. It's unique, it's different, it's a little rough around the edges, it's a little sloppy for me, too long, but no truly offensive bad jokes in it either. Like, we talk about all this gay stuff and homophobia, blah, 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 but none of it's like really offensive. It's just kind of lame. Like, it's just like, oh, okay, lame, very of its time.
Yeah, the film never really says like, oh, these guys are gay, that means they're bad. It's just like the bad people happen to be very gay. Yeah.
Which in itself is saying something.
Yeah.
But we have a recommendation for next episode from the listening people. We are up to that portion, and I was going through our list. There's some new additions there.
Yeah.
We would love if people kept giving us new additions as well. If people want to recommend films, hit us up on our social medias or our email, which is all in the description below, because we do pick films that you guys recommend and we do them on the show. And we had one recommended a little while ago that piqued both your interest and mine, because there was a whole slew of conversation building to this. So I think it's time we look at a war film called The Beast or The Beast of War.
Yeah, okay.
The original title is The Beast, but then I think at least in Australia it's called The Beast of War. At least that's what comes up when I look at it on IMDb. So we'll be covering that. I cannot remember what year it's from off the top of my head. 1981?
Yeah, the big deal that was made about it was like it's from the 80s to us. Yeah.
And yeah, do you want to go over some background, or do we want to leave that for next week? We were told a bit about like what we think of this when it will land in the spectrum of war films.
Yeah,
along those lines.
It's not fresh in my head. All I'll say is that this was one that we received in an email and a Facebook message. A very long one that the person recommending it
very
passionate, had a lot of things to say about it and wants us to answer a question at the end. So definitely by next episode, we'll refresh ourselves on the mission that we've been given about this film.
I will go over that after having watched the film. I want to go into this as fresh as possible and look at it as it is on its own, and then afterwards I'll look over what we were told and thoughts about it, and then reflect on it.
Yeah.
Because going into it with all of this, it was
overhype it. Yeah.
That's why I left it for a while. Because there was all of this great momentum from that email that piqued my interest, piqued yours. But I also wanted to give enough time where the details of that email and the conversation didn't influence me too much walking in. Because there's always that thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you get recommended a movie and you go, guys, it's blah, blah, blah. And you're like, no, let me just watch it. But at the same time, you also got to get people excited about movies you recommend. So I get it.
It's a fine balance.
As I said, you can follow us on the social medias of Facebook and Twitter, Spit and Polish Presents. You can email us at spitandpolished@gmail.com if you want to talk to us more directly. Bartek's giggling for some reason.
Yes, I know. Just something funny thought came to my head.
Okay.
What if the film's from 1982?
Oh, that would have been...
You'd really love it if it was from 1982.
Yeah, 82% chance I'd love it.
Ryan is 82.
Yeah, Ryan's 82, or flip it around, 28, no longer. I'm now 29.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can be found on all of your podcast hosting sites of choice. We are also on YouTube, where we post our episodes as videos on there, so you can leave us a message or a comment as well, and subscribe and do all of that. Rate and review us on whatever podcasting site you use to do so. And that is all I have got for you. Zaki, my friend, my fellow Australian friend who recommended this movie on Australian Netflix, thank you so much for pitching this one to me a while ago. I've been meaning to get around to it, and I thought, hey, it's that time of the year where I have some free time for podcast recommends, because in October we will be doing our spooky month. So I thought, let's get some of the things that aren't spooky choices out of the way before we enter the spooky time. Because I've got to be honest, some of the movies that I have just floating around that I want to recommend, I'm like, that feels a little too spooky, and I don't want to do too much spooks before we get to spooky month itself.
Mm-hmm.
But that is Bartek's getting all serious. He's looking at me. He's gritting his teeth.
Maybe remember that for next week.
Oh.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.